Uh, let's look at Auburn's schedule. We don't have a graphic for it, but we know Auburn's schedule. They open up against Alabama A&M, followed by Cal the following week. New Mexico, the other New Mexico comes to Auburn. Game 3. Auburn opens up SEC play in week 4 against Arkansas there, and then Oklahoma comes to town. We already said that Auburn needs to go 4-0 in this season. I have Oklahoma as the must-win game.
Hmm.
But follow that, you have Georgia on the road. That's Auburn's first road game. Auburn goes on just a road tour throughout the month of October. Georgia on the road, Missouri on the road, Kentucky on the road, back home against Vandy, Louisiana Monroe, Texas A&M, and at Bama. What's the must-win game for Auburn? If Auburn is going to get into the top 25, what is it? There's going to be a game that Auburn has to get, right? You can't have any losses like what we suffered at the hands of New Mexico State last
Right.
year. And if you have a game like Bama down the stretch, you can't give up that game either. So what's the game? What's the game that Auburn has to have in his back pocket this year? Must win for you, Ike. I say Oklahoma, but what do you say?
Yeah, no, I think the Oklahoma game at home is one that you got to get. You have to be able to get that game early to give yourself a little momentum and the ability to not have something on the back half of the schedule. Um, because those road games are going to be tough. You need to be able to split those road games. So when I talk about the road games, I mean specifically um, Georgia, Bama, Kentucky, Missouri, right? Like you need to go 2-2 in those games and then do well in the rest of your schedule. So you need to start out undefeated at home to begin the season and then split the back half road schedule and then protect home for the remainder of the season. I think to even have a shot to get in the top 25 by the end of the year because that it gives you only 2 losses. Right. Like you could potentially have it be a 3-loss team and still be in there, but it's going to be tough. Going to be tough. I think you
Be a
get maybe the SEC bias a little bit that'll keep you in that top 25. But to your point, I don't think it happens if you drop one of those first games, those first 5 at home, particularly Oklahoma.
So what does Auburn's record need to be?
To stay in the top 25 at the end of the season, you can't
Yes.
lose any more than 3 games, I don't think. Not
So an
anymore.
8-14 wouldn't get in there.
I don't think so. I don't know. Like I think
I think you're hovering. You're
yeah.
definitely hovering around the top 25. I get you. I feel you 9-3. Let's think about that. 9-3. 9-3 because you're in the SEC can have you pretty high.
Yeah.
Like you're not only in the top 25, you're maybe top 15.
Yeah.
I'm think 8-4 can sneak you into the top
I guess
25.
it just depends on who your 4 losses are, right? Like if
Okay.
if your only losses are to Georgia on the road, Bama on the road, Missouri on the road, and Oklahoma at home, then maybe, right? Because those are the best 4 teams on your schedule, right?
So is it possible to lose to Oklahoma and still get into the top 25?
It's gonna be tough. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think you need that Oklahoma game early to be able to keep you coasting later in the season to absorb some losses. I'm struggling to find a fourth win that looks respectable. Texas A&M on the road, maybe Texas A&M on the road. No, Texas A&M is at home.
Yes, that's a home game.
It just depends on how good Texas A&M is. I don't think you can lose to Kentucky on the road. I don't think that you can lose.
I think
Definitely
that's my
can't.
second must-win game.
Really, Kentucky on the road is. Yeah,
Yes.
I don't think you can lose. You definitely can't lose at home to Vanderbilt, and you can't drop any of your cupcakes. And you can't lose to Arkansas at home, right? Like I don't think you. If one of those is your 4 losses, I don't know how you stay in the top 25. Like
Right.
I think it's a chance. I mean, but then you're hoping everybody else kind of falls apart after 15.
Depending on what type of Missouri team we're looking at, and I'm pretty sure by the time we go to Columbia to play Missouri, because their schedule is manageable, there will be a ranked opponent. So if you lose to a Missouri, that's not. I don't know if Kentucky is ranked by
Yeah,
the time we play them. You can't lose that game.
I
That's
agree.
why I say that's a must win.
I can agree with that. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's my point. Is like to be ranked. And again, we're looking at the scenario of Auburn having 4 losses. One of those losses can't be Kentucky, in my opinion.
The way I have it
Or
is,
or or you gotta beat Bama or Georgia on the road.
mm,
Like you can't have both of them. You can't lose both of those games and lose to Kentucky, I don't think, and stay in the top 25 if you
I
have
agree.
4 losses.
So if Auburn wins 5 in a row, Ike,
Mhm.
and you beat Kentucky on the road, Auburn has a chance to, even though Auburn's only playing 3 games in the
That
month of
makes them 6 and
October.
2 after 8 games. Is that am I correct with
Yes.
that? 6 and 2 after 8 games?
They will be 6-2. You then can potentially go on. I know people circle Vanderbilt as a concern because of who their quarterback is,
Right.
and the former New Mexico State head coach being on staff,
Mhm.
off the field, but on staff. Uh, but Auburn has a chance to win 3 in a row. That gives you 8 wins there going into the final 2 games of the season.
Right.
So you have A&M. We don't know what A&M is yet.
Right.
Um, but you have them for an opportunity to get a ninth win, and then you go on the road against Bama.
Right.
Don't know much about Bama yet. Still a talented team, but don't know much about them. To me, I think that's going into the final 2 games of the season. 8 wins has you pretty, what, top 15? You got to be what,
Going
eight?
into that last game.
You're 8-2 going into A&M coming into town.
Mhm.
7-3 maybe if you do drop the Oklahoma game.
Yeah, I don't man, that's why I think that Oklahoma game is such a pivotal game
Yeah.
for where you are in the grand scheme of things. I don't know. I let's play that scenario for a second. So after Oklahoma, you're 4-1, and your only quality win at that point in time is at
You're
home.
probably not ranked
Yeah, that's
if
what I'm
you're
saying.
7 and 3.
You're at
You're not
home
ranked.
versus Arkansas is your only P5 win so far.
Because even if you lose to Oklahoma, Georgia's the next week.
Right.
I'm not giving us Missouri.
So
So
that's what I'm
that's a
saying.
you're talking about a 3-game losing
Right.
streak.
You're
So
4-3 at that
you're
point in time.
sliding.
Yeah.
You're sliding down, right?
Yeah. I don't know how you
That's
can.
why Oklahoma is my number one
Yeah.
pivotal game,
Yeah.
because you at the least give yourself, even if you lose 2 games, you have a chance to, you may not have even fallen out of the top 25 by that point. May not, especially depending on how you play Georgia on the road and how you play Missouri on the road. You still may get a little bit of grace, or you may be right outside the top 25 getting a few votes. But if you pick up a 3-game winning streak, assuming you beat Kentucky on the road, you beat Vandy, you beat La Monroe, other teams playing ahead of you in the top 25, maybe losing games, that pushes Auburn into the top 25 if they were outside of it, right? Losing to Oklahoma, I don't know if it does that for you. You almost have to beat A&M at home to then be ranked going on the road to Tuscaloosa.
And what you're saying the record is at that point in time with A&M?
You're going A&M's coming into Jordan Hare and you're 7-3. You would probably need to beat, and that game becomes important if you're trying to fight to be in the top 25.
So 7-3 with losses, and who are the three losses at that point in time?
Oklahoma, Missouri, and Georgia. You got a 3-game losing streak
Mm.
to what I believe would be ranked teams at that point.
And you're saying then you get Texas A&M, you've got a chance to be in the top 25 going into Bama?
You have a chance.
I don't see it.
You have a chance.
I don't
The reason
see
why I
it.
see it is just because of what everyone else. But by this point, you're seeing chaos in college football. So
Yeah.
you're sliding into the back half of the top 25. I'm not saying you're deep in the top 25,
Yeah,
but
I don't
you're s-
know.
you're
That's
creeping in
rough.
there.
I mean, it's good for the ratings and narratives that around
Yeah.
that game, making it the Iron Bowl a top 25 matchup.
Yes.
I just
That
don't.
helps you too.
I think a lot of this is predicated on where Auburn comes into the season ranked, right? Like
Mm.
if they're ranked again within a 10 striking distance of 25, I, like you really got to be scraping outside the top 25. I don't know that there's a scenario where Auburn can lose to Oklahoma and lose to Missouri and I think you've got to get one of those three games. I think if you lose to Oklahoma, then you've got to beat Missouri or Georgia on the road if you're going to be a top 25 team.
Okay.
I can't unless some of these other teams that
That's what I'm banking on.
are
That's what I'm
falling
banking
apart.
on.
Yeah.
That's what I'm banking on.
Like that's a prayer right there.
And one thing that you have to consider is there's not going to be 9 ranked SEC teams. I don't think there will be. I think we're going to cannibalize each other,
What I
especially
mean, the schedules this or these schedules set up, that's definitely possible. How many teams from the SEC finished the season ranked last year? I guess it's a good question to look at. I understand the scheduling is not going to be the same, but how many teams finished last season's in the top 25? Um and who are those teams? Because I think that's an interesting thing to take a look at to determine the likelihood, because again, that Georgia schedule that you read off is tough. That Bama schedule you read off is tough. Um, of the 16 teams, you're saying it's unlikely that 9 of them are ranked.
it's unlikely, in my opinion.
So okay, so I mean, again, while you're looking
So
that up,
Texas, are we counting Texas? Are we counting Texas and Oklahoma this year or last year?
no, let's just count who was actually in the SEC.
So Georgia, Bama, Ole Miss, LSU, that's 4. Tennessee, 5. That was it.
So 5 teams out of the 14.
That's in the AP. Let me look at the coaches. Georgia, Bama, Missouri. I think I skipped over Missouri. Did I say Missouri earlier?
I
I think I
wasn't
skipped
listening
over
to the
them.
names. I was just
Georgia, Bama, Missouri, Ole Miss, LSU, Tennessee. That's 6.
okay. 6 out of the 14 last year. And so the question is, with adding 2, and where did Oklahoma and Texas finish last year? They both finished in the top 25? Yeah,
Texas
not
was
9 feels like
3.
a lot even with the addition of those 2.
Texas was the top 5, and Oklahoma was top 15.
Yeah, even with the addition of those 2, that does feel 9 feels like a lot. I'd say 7 to 8 probably feels a little more realistic.
Right. Now
Um,
that those teams are playing other SEC teams, like
yeah.
someone has to lose.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that's tough, man. That's tough. Like I said, I still, with all of that chaos happening, it feels as if there again, there's a couple of other things that has to be factored into this. Like we're looking at the teams on Auburn's schedule and assuming they're going to be good, but what if those other teams fall apart and
Or there's an injury that happens.
yeah, and Auburn, the Missouri game doesn't look as good because it was against an inferior Missouri opponent, right? Or the um I don't know who else. Kentucky, win looks a little less appealing because Vandergriff is not as good as people thought that he was going to be, right? Like I don't know, man. There's a lot of what ifs in this, but I just feel like if you're looking at projections going into the season of these teams, it's really tough for me to envision a scenario where Auburn loses Oklahoma, Missouri, and Georgia, the 3 best teams on their schedule, and even if those are the only 3 losses, that they can get Texas A&M and have that 4th loss be Bama and still finish the season like
You
like
may not finish the season ranked if you lose to Bama. I'm saying you're probably going into the Iron Bowl ranked, maybe 24,
maybe
23, somewhere like that.
maybe like I said, I just may because again, like what I'd have to look at this as an impartial non-Auburn fan and say, what quality wins does that Auburn team have on their schedule that makes them a top 25 team? And the answer to that is going to be nothing. Kentucky's going to
Yeah.
be the best win on your resume on the road because you would have
Right.
beaten Arkansas unless Arkansas is way better by the end by game 11 of the season than people thought they would be because they got that early loss to Auburn. Then you would have gotten Arkansas at home early in the season.
It feels weird you're not playing Mississippi State this year. It's
You
so
would have
weird.
gotten Vanderbilt at home, and you would have had Kentucky on the road as your P5 wins to that point in the season. There's no quality wins on that unless you're unless Arkansas is better than people expect and Kentucky is kind of who they normally are as a middling team in the SEC. That's the best win that you have is a road win versus Kentucky. I don't if that was anybody else's resume but Auburn, and I'm looking down the barrel of that at the end of the season and saying, is that a top 25 team? I'd be like, heck no. Who did they play? They didn't beat anybody.
I don't know. I just seen some top 25 teams sneak in there, and I'm like,
I mean,
"Mm,
I don't disagree that it could happen in the eyes of the voters. I just don't see. I don't think that's a top 25 resume. If I'm looking at that team saying, are they one of the top 25 teams in the country? I'd say heck no. Again, remove the name of the school from it and just look at who they played, where they played them, and what the final outcome was. And I'd say that's not a top 25 resume. You beat Kentucky on the road. That's it. You beat
Re-
Cal at home. Big whoop.
regardless of what the voters would think about a potential 8-4 Auburn, how would Ike Jones feel about a potential 8-4 Auburn after year
Oh, I'd love it.
two of
No,
Hugh
listen.
Freeze?
Oh, listen. An 8-4 record at the end of this season would be a that's a win for Coach Freeze at the end of this. I don't know if that's a
Yes,
top 25 resume, but that's a win for Coach Freeze going into year 3 to be able to get 8 wins on that schedule. But and there is a path to 8 wins that seems feasible, right? Like there
it
is,
really is.
yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
I can envision an 8-win schedule, an 8 wins out of that because again, that's literally the scenario we just talked about. Oklahoma, Missouri, Georgia, Bama are your 4 losses. Okay, that's respectable. You would have beaten Texas A&M, you'd have beaten Kentucky, and you'd have beaten Arkansas. Um, am I missing an SEC win there? Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Texas A&M, Arkansas. So you'd gone 4-4 in conference,
A&M, Vandy, Kentucky,
Arkansas.
Arkansas. Yeah,
Yeah, so you'd have gone 4-4 in conference, and you would have beaten the only other Power 5 guy on your schedule, which is Cal. So you'd be 5-4 in P5 games that season. Yeah, I'd
that's an
take that.
improvement.
I'd
That's an
take that.
improvement. Going into the bowl season with 8 wins is huge.
Yeah.
And if you've gone 8-4, you've shown recruits what you need to show them. Obviously, your offense, especially if you're going to get some important wins on the road, your offense is showing signs of life,
Yeah.
right? So I think Auburn is taking a step forward uh, going into, and again to keep your momentum going recruiting wise. It's time to show some results on the field that you are moving in the direction that you're pitching to these high schoolers.
Yeah.
Any other closing thoughts on this, Ike?
Um, I think yeah, what you said about Oklahoma, the more we talk about this, the bigger that game becomes in my
Yeah,
mind. Like,
yeah,
and it was
yeah.
already a pivotal game in my opinion on the schedule, but like the more that we talk about it and you're looking at momentum and where the schedule lines up, like you almost have to start the season 5-0, which is a
Okay,
huge ask, but it's real.